And joining us right now from our nation's capital is our Congressman Carlos Curbelo. Good morning, Mr. Curbelo.
Bill, good morning to you and to Steve.
Good morning.
Appreciate you joining us today. Got a lot to cover here today. Of course, Hurricane Irma recovery for the Keys and all of South Florida, a big issue. You've been in conversation with FEMA and basically putting your concerns into, hopefully, into action. What's the latest?
Yeah, look, this situation with housing is becoming more and more urgent. People are desperate, and that is our greatest concern. We know that housing has been a problem in the Florida Keys for a long time, and that was seriously exacerbated by Hurricane Irma, and we are putting positive pressure on FEMA to do right by the people of Florida Keys, make sure they are providing as many housing options as possible, whether these are mobile housing units or access to existing units that can be rented to help people while they rebuild their lives. And by the way, this is also important to all the local businesses in the Florida Keys, Bill, because without a workforce, it's very hard for our economy in the Florida Keys to get back going. And we know 60% of that economy is tourism, so we're working hard here to make sure FEMA does a good job and adequately responds. I know early response efforts by FEMA got a lot of plaudits from local leaders and from people at the State Emergency Management Department. But in the area of housing, we need to do better, which brings me to another point, Bill. We're working with the Navy to bring those 166 units at Sigsbee online. The RFI process, where they took some ideas from different developers, showed some very interesting designs. They haven't released those because that's all proprietary information, and these individuals, these firms are going to compete eventually in an RFP. We want to speed up that request for proposal process, that procurement process, to get these units online as soon as possible. Again, this was an urgent need before the storm, even more so now.
Another hot issue in Washington right now is Roy Moore, Senate candidate who has been implicated by a number of women in some improper actions, and you weighed in on this. Yeah,
it's the kind of distraction that you typically want to avoid, Bill, especially with so much going on here in Washington, D.C., with regards to tax reform, end of the year legislation to fund the government. But at some point, I think everyone has to speak out. It's pretty clear to me that for whatever reason, the Republican primary in Alabama resulted in someone who's unqualified to serve in the Capitol, to serve in the United States Senate. And these latest allegations with regards to sexual interactions with minors are just part of the problem. This is someone who has expressed bigoted views on religion, being willing to discriminate against people based on their religious beliefs, also bigoted views with regards to sexuality. So this is really someone who doesn't have much to contribute here in Washington, D.C., and what he should do the right thing for the country, for his state, and for his party, and allow someone else to run as the Republican nominee.
And that chorus has certainly been building, too, among Republicans and Democrats on all sides of this, too.
Yeah, I think at some point, and I understand that politics is intensely competitive these days, and a lot of people out there wearing the red jersey and the blue jersey as opposed to the red, white, and blue jersey, which I think we should all be wearing. But at some point, we have to say, look, there are basic standards of decency, of respect, and no one, whether they're Republican, Democrat, Independent, should be allowed to operate outside of those standards. So I truly hope that that situation resolves itself favorably, and that the people of Alabama have a choice to make between hopefully two good candidates as opposed to the current situation where there's one candidate which clearly lacks the qualifications to serve here in the Capitol.
Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, as we reported this morning at 7:30, you have been named as one of two recipients of this year's John F. Kennedy New Frontier Award, which is that's quite an honor.
Bill, Jack Schlossberg called me. He's President Kennedy's grandson, and I really couldn't believe it. And I told him, look, I certainly accept this recognition, although I'm not sure I deserve it, because in the entire country to be recognized as a leader under 40 who's making a difference just really means a lot to me. It's very humbling, and I think it's a very generous recognition. But it is important work we're doing here in the Capitol, and I can't do it alone. I'm doing it with many colleagues on both sides of the aisle, especially my partner in the Climate Solutions Caucus, Ted Deutsch. And again, I'm driven by the fact that this is an important local issue. People, especially in the Florida Keys, but really all over South Florida, and truly the state of Florida, many coastal communities throughout the country are increasingly concerned about the issue of sea level rise. We know that sea levels are rising. They continue to rise, and that is a real and direct threat to our ability to live in what I would call the most beautiful part of the world, which is South Florida and the Keys. And we need to find solutions to this problem. We need to do it in a rational, bipartisan way, in a way that promotes economic growth, that doesn't throw people out of their jobs, and also in a way that secures the future for our children and our grandchildren. So I think what's really important about this recognition from the Kennedy Library is the fact that this is a major generational challenge that I have decided to take part in and try to solve. And I truly hope that the result is that it encourages more, especially Republicans, to look at this issue, study this issue, and realize that inaction is not an option.
Okay, well, congratulations. You'll be receiving that award in Boston on Thursday. Good work. We're almost out of time, but just briefly, the tax reform bill continues to evolve. Could hit the full House floor this week?
That's scheduled for Thursday, Bill, and this is exciting because this is the most important thing that this Congress can do to make American families more prosperous. And this speaks to specifically many American households who never felt the economic recovery. They read about it in the newspaper, they hear about it on news shows, but they don't feel like they shared in the economic recovery that began after the Great Recession. And this tax bill is a way to expand economic opportunity in this country, to deliver immediate relief to lower and middle income families, which would benefit greatly from the new provisions that we're putting in, like the expanded child tax credit, the new parent tax credit, the new tax credit for those taking care of non-children dependents, such as elderly parents at home. These are provisions that will strengthen American households, strengthen the American family, and I'm very hopeful that on Thursday, not only we pass this out of the House, but that many of our Democratic colleagues join in to support us, because this is something that's going to make a true difference for all of the American people.
Congressman Carlos Curbelo, thanks for joining us.
Thank you. You'll have a good day.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.
It's 8:31. We have local news straight ahead.